What's up guys, welcome to Daily Refinement. Today's video I'm talking about the time that I was blackmailed on eBay, and this is when my eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, and email were all hacked at the same time. So I have some important security measures that all resellers should take. You can learn from my mistake, and if you do these things, you can avoid having your traffic slow down on websites, because if your account health is compromised at all, they actually will limit traffic as part of their security measures. So please smash the like button, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys inside. Before I get into my blackmail story, I want to go over the security measures you can take to protect your account. Also, this video is sponsored by Aura, but more on them later. The number one thing you want to consider is your account health. If you don't have your account, then you can't even sell at all. So it's really important to look at these 4 things to avoid being banned. Number one is you need to avoid all policy violations. So policy violations might be like in my scenario where I was suspended for not having enough invoices from authorized dealers. It could be something like the verified rights program. We talk about that on this channel a lot, the Vero program. So if you are listing counterfeit items or you're listing items that the verified brand's owner doesn't want you listing, you can get policy violations and that can affect your placement. That's number one. Number two, you want to avoid shipping things late. If you ship too many items late or you don't ship things at all and people end up having to get a refund, that's going to account towards your account negatively. Next is going to be losing items. So the most drastic thing that can happen is you have an out of stock defect, which means that you sold something that you don't have. Either it's because you lost it or you double sold it. And most commonly this happens when you sell on more than one platform. Sells on that platform, you go to find it, it's already sold. You have to refund that customer, it usually counts against your account. And even worse could be eBay might negatively penalize you because the number one reason people stop shopping on eBay is a poor experience. So this may lead to getting a negative feedback, which in my opinion does affect your traction. Because if a customer is unhappy, if I was eBay, I would refer less people to you because I would be afraid. I'm not gonna penalize you completely for having one negative feedback, but again, the algorithm is based on what you normally do most of the time. So if most of the time you're doing a great job, usually there's no problem. But I am superstitious like that. I think that a negative feedback will affect your traffic slightly. Okay, next is you need to avoid being labeled a drop shipper. This is really, really important because if eBay sees a mismatch between where you ship your items and your actual zip code on your account, they may think that you're ordering from a warehouse and you don't have the items in stock. So just like earlier we talked about, if you are out of stock, it really negatively affects your account. If they think you're drop shipping, the likelihood that you're gonna not be able to fulfill an order is also very high. So drop shipping can be labeled to your account for a couple reasons. One, the zip code is a mismatch. So also, as you guys know, eBay is now asking us to upload our driver's license, social security number so they can do taxes. If there's any mismatch on the addresses, it causes some red flags. So just make sure all your addresses line up. I recommend getting a PO box so your return address is not your home address. I think it's worth the $25 a month for that type of a service. One thing that a lot of resellers don't talk about is that you should not use a VPN. It's because when you use a VPN, it's kind of like hiding your IP address, and eBay may look at that like you are either a drop shipper or you're out of the country. So I don't recommend that you use a VPN for eBay listing. You should just use your dedicated internet, and I recommend you do not share your internet with anybody else, especially somebody else who sells, because any of that negative traffic may go over into your account. And there's like horror stories of people going to eBay Open or a reseller event. They're using the public Wi-Fi. Somebody is suspended. They become suspended. They have to go through the hassle of explaining to eBay that these two accounts are not related and not linked. So I don't recommend you share your Wi-Fi password with anyone. That's really, really important. And I recommend you get a private one for your streaming. So for me, I have backups on backups of internet. If one internet goes down, we use a different internet, and the one that the accounts is on is separate and no one has the password to that. So this is a way to separate personal and business, and also a compromised account with your account. So when it comes to security, it's really important, like we said before, to not have your Wi-Fi password public. And on top of that, this is where I got hacked. Essentially, I opened a phishing email. Nothing happened to me financially, but identity theft is really common, and it was a huge hassle for me to get all my accounts back. So I really recommend that you invest in some kind of account protection and monitoring. That brings us to today's sponsor, which is Aura. A lot of companies offer credit monitoring and account tracking, and this is to prevent somebody from getting a loan in your name or opening a credit card in your name. But Aura actually goes a few steps further, which is important because for me, that wouldn't have happened if I had just had a little antivirus on my computer and if I had a password manager. So Aura actually has both of these things and a VPN service as well. So if you're really trying to protect yourself against the bad guys, it's important to be preventative. All right, guys, the most important part of Aura is that it's all-in-one protection. So essentially, a lot of companies offer different parts of protection, but with Aura, from your main dashboard, you can look at your 3-bureau credit monitoring. So when an inquiry happens, it doesn't always happen on just one. It may happen on all 3 or 2, so it's important to monitor all 3. Your credit lock is important because you can turn that on or off while you're investigating. You can do antivirus, which is really important. That would have prevented my hacker from getting into my computer. A secure VPN you can use while browsing. Your password manager is really key because for me, sometimes I find myself getting a little bit lazy and ending up using a password that's the same. And this service helps you think of a new unique password for every single website. They have really great 24/7 US-based customer support, and they go over all the different ways you can protect your identity right on this main platform. And importantly, also here is that you can use it for your entire family. They've got parental controls for parents and kids. Okay, so here is the juicy part. I don't know what happened exactly, but I opened an email that was a phishing attempt. So it was either somebody pretending to be eBay or somebody pretending to be Poshmark, but I used the same password for my Gmail, my Instagram, my eBay, my Poshmark, and my Mercari. So that's a huge red flag. Do not do that. Do not have the same password for all your websites. So I basically compromised my device. They used a device that counted the keystrokes or something, so they figured out what the password was, and then they essentially logged into all my accounts. So the first one that was disabled automatically was Gmail, so that one was pretty secure. They never actually got into my email. When they went to Poshmark and Mercari, they changed the bank account. So they were trying to essentially withdraw the funds into their bank account. Neither of those were successful because I did have 2-factor authentication turned on for when more important things happen, like changing a username or changing a bank account or changing address. So those websites pinged me and I never actually had any financial damage on Poshmark and Mercari. So kudos to them for having good security. On eBay though, they were able to get in, and what happened was they started refunding all my buyers. So they refunded all my buyers. They found my phone number. They texted me and said, if you want us to stop messing with your account, stop trying to hack you, pay us X amount of ransom and we'll leave you alone. And at that time, I was also kind of in a rush because I was trying to figure out how to unblock my Instagram account because they had hacked into my Instagram account, and Instagram knew it was some type of compromise, so they shut the account down. And so I couldn't even log in, I couldn't reach anybody. It took me a couple days to get my Instagram account back. But eBay, they were able to get in and they started refunding buyers. So I got the text, and essentially what happened was I didn't respond. I just changed my eBay password and then it went away. So now every single one of my websites has a different password that's really long and not connected. I think that's a good way to do it. Instead of a number or a word, it's a combination of words and phrases that are all different with special characters so that no one can really guess what your accounts are. And I have a different password for everything. So what happened on eBay, after they had refunded all those people, I essentially messaged all of those people back and they paid again. So luckily the customers on eBay were honest because those items had already shipped. So essentially what they were going to try to do is blackmail me into giving my account back. Now, I've heard stories before where if you end up giving them money, why wouldn't they just do it again? So that's something that I don't, they always say don't negotiate with terrorists, but in this scenario, I just think that it doesn't make sense. You can just change your password and start over, and just be careful because if you are what happened to me, which is where there's something on your computer, they're just gonna get your password again when you type it in because I'm assuming the way they got my password is a keystroke recorder, and they figured out what was being typed and they were able to figure out my password that way. So you need to be careful, and if your device is compromised, you need to go back and wipe your device completely free again, start it over from factory settings. That's really important too, because somebody gave me that advice and I made sure to wipe my device clean again. But without that security and all your things set up, it's going to be problematic. Also, I recommend you create a separate login on your computer that's for your eBay. So I have my personal account and my business accounts on different usernames on the same computer. That way you can separate it. And I've heard that once you start getting really high level, you almost always want to use a guest login just because you don't want it to record anything. So depending on your level of business, these important safety precautions will keep you safe. They'll keep your accounts from getting banned. They'll keep hackers from being able to find out your personal information. You'll keep your privacy intact, and you'll be able to not be compromised from people also getting into your bank accounts.